For the wrap-up, the chair recognizes the honourable member for Fox Hill.
Mr. Speaker, there's a line in Macbeth. You remember the line? Methinks the lady doth, or is it? Is it Macbeth or is it Hamlet? No, it's Hamlet. Hamlet. The line is, methinks the lady doth protest too much. Methinks the lady doth protest too much. That's what you call a real scorched earth performance. You know, no subtlety, just a big hammer and smash everything in its path. Indiscriminate slash and burn. And I do agree with, I don't remember saying it, but I agree. The F&M should control its trolls on social media, man. They should. Or too much foolishness.
The member for Long Island.
Mr. Speaker,
Member for Long Island, you
I
right?
take exception with everything that the Speaker has said thus far, the member for Fox Hill. Not only is he belligerent, but he's also referring to Bahamians, humans, supporters of this party as trolls, which I had spoken to already. But now he reinforces his arrogance and his absolute disregard for other Bahamians. This is just totally unacceptable language to be used in this honorable place, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable.
Mrs. Speaker, I didn't introduce the word troll in here. I didn't introduce it.
Member for Fox Hill, the member took issue with the word trolls. The chair also has a challenge with the word trolls used to describe persons, and so the chair would prefer you to not use such strong language.
Well, it's a common term in parlance around. There's nothing obscene about it. But fine, I'll withdraw the word trolls.
Thank you,
The
Honourable member.
point is, Mr. Speaker, that social media makes comments about what is happening in public policy. In fact, that drives much of the commentary that we now face. And the amount of utter garbage that comes from people who are associated with that party simply for political advantage, the foolishness that they say and speak and write, the falsehoods. Yes. It's just unbelievable. I ask myself, again, it's like the question I asked myself today with regard to the fellow up in Grand Bahama. Are these people mad? Have they taken leave of their senses? In which country are they living? All of us, Mr. Speaker, I may have said this in another place, all of us were raised in this country. The same teachers, go to the same churches, the same morality, the same ethics, and all of a sudden the repository of all that is good is on one side and none on the next? Where do you get that foolishness from? Where do you get it from? And we must sit here and listen to nonsense and be silent in the face of it? But what is this?
No surrender, no retreat.
Jeepers. We're talking about the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Foreign Affairs. That's what this bill is about. Trying to get these foreign service in place that we've been trying to do for a generation. I actually don't know where to begin. I just heard so much foolishness here.
Between that one and that one.
I mean, gee. I mean, everything's going, and the thing is, Mr. Speaker, everything's going along fine till the member for Long Island arrives in the place. And then the whole thing gets, well, the speaker who spoke before, the member for, I mean, you know, I wasn't here when that took place. Who started this whole nonsense about where do you travel? The Ministry of Foreign Affairs travel budget is not the minister's travel. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs travel budget is everybody, all the technical officials, all of the people who have to travel for and on behalf of this country. And fine, if they want everybody to stay home, fine. Let the place and its reputation collapse. And then the next thing you know, they'll be in the House of Assembly saying, we allowed the place's reputation to collapse.
That's right.
One of the things the member just mentioned, Mr. Speaker, was speaking to the people of the Dominican Republic. But we don't have an army. We can't go over to the Dominican Republic and invade them and say, cut it out. We don't have the power to do that. All we have is our diplomats. And they have to go over there to talk to the people.
That's right.
You want them to stay here, and at the same time, you want them to stop the poaching problem. How do you figure that's going to work? Sometimes they have to come here, sometimes we have to go there. That's the way it works. And while the progress may be imperceptible to some, there is progress on that front. And the fact is, I made the point that diplomacy without muscle doesn't work. So we're getting the muscle, the Minister for National Security, the House, we came to the House, asked for permission to borrow the monies, to get the boats, so that people know that we're serious. But at the same time, we have our own Bahamians marrying people, getting them spousal permits, having them on the boats. The law is clear on the subject. And you wouldn't believe the number of people you have coming to lobby for this one and that one and the next one as exceptions to the policy on fisheries. All the time. This balancing act, everyone coming at you from every side. But the government is determined to defend our borders. I received an inquiry the other day. We don't have diplomatic relations with Vietnam, but we have a company in Grand Bahama right now that does not have the expertise available in the country to do some work on a major contract that they're doing. They hire hundreds of Bahamians. They have a training program. And we gave them a license to operate the Grand Bahama shipyard up in Grand Bahama. They need, they say, to bring workers in from Vietnam. But it's a problem getting the workers because we don't have diplomatic relations with Vietnam. So suppose we say, oh no, we're not going to fool with that. We're not going to have any relationship with them because the member for Long Island says, no, we can't fool with that. And if it requires going over there to sign something, the member for Montague say, no, you got to stay in Nassau. And suppose that jeopardizes the project. What are we to do? What are we to do? I mean, just myopic, silliness, pettiness for political brownie points, something which their own administration. See, the problem, Mr. Speaker, and this is what I think, is that foreign affairs is too transparent. That's the problem. Because my own view is that everything we do ought to be in the public domain. Everything, without fail. And the result is the attention of the public is drawn to it. But when my predecessor used to just jump on the plane and say nothing and go, do the same trips, the same things I do, routine trips that you have to do every year. Routine, nothing, all budgeted for. Sheepers. The Prime Minister becomes, oh, sorry, there's one point that was raised. This question of the sometimes individual allegations of misbehavior and malfeasance of officers of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And I say this only in the comment to this wild thing about someone who got a house and did something, something, something. Believe me, Mr. Speaker, any individual who breaches rules of conduct is dealt with in accordance with the rules of the public service and the foreign service, without fear or favor. I don't get involved in it. I don't interfere with it. And the permanent secretary knows what the rules are. And I don't think I have to make any further comment on that at all. It's like the complaints that have been made that I spoke about in the House of Assembly this morning, the complaints of abuse. The problem with responding to these things is that the people who make the complaints have privacy because the relationship between...
Member stands on the point of order. Chair recognizes member for Long Island.
I've sat and listened to the member for Fox Hill in closing out this debate. And the difficulty that I have with what he is saying is this. He says he does not have anything to say with regards to someone in our foreign service appointed by that administration who would have acted outside of the parameters of their responsibility and done these things and said, so what? This is like something from a foreigner saying something. It is ridiculous because, Mr. Speaker, before we send officers abroad, they are supposed to know how they're acting. We have an officer who will spend money.
No such thing.
Very well. Member for Long Island.
This is absolutely wrong. This is
Very well.
wrong.
Your point is made. The chair recognizes member for Fox Hill.
I said no such thing. I said no such thing. I said, I don't know what you're talking about anything. And I could give you, no.
Member for Fox Hill. Members, please.
I am not responding to any of that. I'm not responding to any of that. See, because we know examples of people under their watch who ran up huge credit card bills that haven't been settled to this day. To this day. And they said nothing about it. Nothing about it. All I say is, the public service rules are what they are, and anybody who breaches those rules suffer the discipline, whatever it is. Whatever it is, without fear or favor. Without fear or favor. Sorry? Yeah, no, I understand. No, I remember that. Bought a house that should never have been bought. Never been bought. Wasted public funds. And no accountability for it.
None.
Jeepers.
You're wasting people's money and don't want to account for it.
And you're wasting God's breath. What you want me to say? What you want me to say? No, you be quiet. That's the point.
Continue to address
Be respectful. Be quiet. Be nice. You know.
Members.
Because this is an honorable place, an honorable person sit in it, and we assume that you are honorable. That's why you should be quiet.
Mr. Speaker, I do not know who the member is speaking to. Speaking to you.
The member is directing his attention to the chair. Member for Long Island.
I wasn't talking
to you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well.
This is absolutely ridiculous the way that this is exactly what I spoke to. This member is out of control, Mr. Speaker. He is out of control.
Your point is taken, member for Long Island. Thank you very much. Member for Fox Hill.
Out of control like the trolls of the FNA. Oh, sorry, I'm not supposed to say that. I take it back. Well, it takes one to know one. No retreat, no surrender. That's it. No retreat. Just standing in here and let people denigrate you and all the rest of say any manner of nonsense. You're not supposed to say it. Fucking fool. Ah, boy. I hope I'm not in the bucket with you.
Members.
Yeah?
Member for Fox Hill. Take your seat. Member for Fox Hill, take your seat. Take your seat. Members. No, we're not going there any further. The chair is not going to allow any further innuendos. This is an honorable place. The member was on his feet, and we're gonna leave that right there. Let's all take a moment to just bring it down a bit.
You got to have space in the bucket.
Member for Fox Hill, you may continue. Members?
Lord. Mr. Speaker, the member of Parliament for St. Anne's, the opposition spokesman on foreign affairs, talked about the question of a disciplined force. The disciplined force was meant to, as I said, in terms of the definition which he read in Article 31 of the Constitution, is meant to provide the legal and constitutional cover for the fact that some of the labor laws which would not apply to officers of the Foreign Service. And that is because in the structure of things, when the Prime Minister or the government gives an instruction, officers have to carry out those instructions. And so it is almost, well, it is a disciplined force. That's the point. And secondly, the member also made the comment about 3 months and the notice. Now, what is supposed to happen, and I think in connection with the transfer, particularly at the time there's a change of administrations or a change of Prime Minister, what is supposed to happen is that when the administration changes, the heads of mission are supposed to submit a letter of resignation to the government, which is usually an open letter of resignation, so that the new government says to the persons when to come home, so that the Prime Minister does not have to, in fact, recall people. So that is the practice that has been followed traditionally. So even though the contracts, there are contracts which are signed with each ambassador or head of mission who serves overseas, and the clause in each contract is 3 months. There's a 3 months notice clause, and most people just allow you to work out the notice, or the government will pay the notice if the Prime Minister says that you're to return immediately. But that's what happens in practice. Okay? Yes, in practice, that is what happens. I'm sorry? Not law. No, what we are doing is inculcating in the rules what is in practice now. All of this is not revolutionary. This is, in fact, codifying what we already practice. So, for example, when someone is appointed an ambassador, there's a contract which is signed with the Minister of Foreign Affairs, which outlines all of the allowances, responsibilities, the timing periods, the vacation, so on and so forth. But this 3-month period that you see in the orders is something which is now, in practice, put in every contract.
Chair recognizes member for St. Anne's.
The member for Foxhill said, I guess, I don't want to misinterpret him, whether in fact each member of the Foreign Service should resign automatically once there's a change of government. Is that written anyplace?
I'm sorry.
No, I'm asking the question. You say a member of the diplomatic corps, whether it be an ambassador, consular general or whatever, ought to resign upon the change of government. Is that written? Written.
Member for Foxhill, you recognize.
The practice is, as soon as the administration changes, the head of mission, consul general or ambassador, that is the political appointees. We're not talking about people who work under those throughout the public service. The practice is that as soon as the administration changes, they submit, in effect, an open letter of resignation, which says this: Dear Prime Minister, I offer my resignation, which will become effective once you choose for it to become effective. And that's the way it operates in practice. I'm sorry?
Like I kept seeing the Prime Minister.
Yes.
I kept seeing Smith of the SOJ.
Right. So that's what happens here.
Prime Minister, the question is, in my mind, and according to the member for Foxhill, whether did Mr. Smith resign upon the change of government? Did he resign, or you asked him to stay on? I'm trying to clarify this in my mind.
They all offered. And I think what happens is the permanent secretary sends a reminder note to everyone. The administration has changed. You should therefore submit your resignation to the Prime Minister, effective when he determines that resignation to be effective. And all ambassadors and heads of missions heads of mission accommodated that request, and the Prime Minister chose when to exercise the date of resignation. So I think Ambassador Smith may have been up in Washington beyond, for several months. He was there, beyond it. So I talked about Mr. Speaker, the question raised by the member for Long Island about crime in the Bahamas and the various reports that have been issued by states about crime in the Bahamas. I am not seeking in any way to lessen the seriousness of that issue for our own population. But I do know that the Ministry of National Security, supported by all of the agencies of the law in this country, are using their best endeavors to see if we can rid this country of the scourge of crime. That's our official position. That's the position on the ground. That is what we are doing every day. Foreign states have the, authority, I'm not sure that's the word for it, but they have an obligation to their own citizens. In the case of the United States, it's actually a legal obligation to disclose to their citizens their assessment of the safety of their citizens when they come to a particular country. And I, myself, take no issue with that per se, save and except we have separated from various countries on timing issues and what they focus on. But that is entirely within their purview. What I do say is this, that part of the reason this becomes more important and looms larger in the Bahamas, in my view, than it is because the political detractors in the country blow these things up into headlines, and every time there's some report made, it suddenly becomes front page news in this country. And I'll tell you, and I say this not because it's what is happening is untrue or it isn't, but you contrast that, for example, to warnings which we in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, because we have an obligation to our own citizens as well, issue for people who travel to the United States. The number of times we have to replace passports for people whose cars have been bumped on roads in in Florida in particular, who've been broken into in parking lots. At one time we thought Bahamians were being targeted and warnings were being issued to Bahamians about being careful in Florida, in Miami in particular. But I always say, the fact that there may be events or crimes in Miami doesn't mean the United States is an unsafe country. I mean, and look at all the mass shootings that have taken place in the United States. You're not sure, in some cases, you go into a mall whether some guy's going to come with a high-powered rifle and kill everybody in the place. That has happened in the United States. But Bahamians don't say the whole United States is unsafe because of that. They still continue to go. And that's the point we make similarly about the Bahamas. The whole Bahamas should not be condemned because there are criminal events in the Bahamas. And too many Bahamians jump with alacrity to that side simply for political convenience. Then, the claim that some diplomatic appointment was an embarrassment to the Bahamas and so on. Embarrassment to whom? Embarrassment to whom? There is no nominee by this government that is an embarrassment to the people of this country. None whatsoever. And I can't account in any way, shape, or form for the uncritically accepted narrative which other people have of Bahamians. That's not my business. But certainly no one put forward by this government is an embarrassment to anyone in this country.
Right.
As a matter of fact, we're proud of them all. And if it was so serious, whatever it is they're talking about, none of those people would have been allowed to be in the countries that they're served in, that they're serving in. But the fact is they are. Too quick to go and talk badly about your own people. Again, just for political gain. Mr. Speaker, I want to extend my condolences to the families of two Foreign Service officers, both of whom were employees in Grand Bahama. Mrs. Roberts and Mrs. Almanzar, both of whom died in the same week, I believe on the same day. And this was a real shock on the system because the office is quite small in Grand Bahama, headed by Mr. Clarence Russell, and trying to get the office to galvanize around and to keep working in the face of these sudden deaths. Mrs. Roberts was my main assistant when I traveled to Grand Bahama on a weekly basis, and she'll be sorely missed. Both funerals will take place on this weekend, and I wish on behalf of the entire ministry and the government to offer condolences to their families. I would also like to pay tribute to the work of Mrs. Carolyn Conliffe, who many people will know from the protocol area. Ms. Conliffe, in the protocol area, works with Andrew McKinney and Terry Archer for her work as well. You know, it takes a team. She's just managing the events up at Government House for the presentation of credentials for Mr. Lowell Mortimer, who is our High Commissioner for India. Mr. Speaker, those seem to have been the points that were raised. I would only say this. The member for Long Island, in seeking to create a scandal where there is none, suggested that some, what do you say, some building or other, something. I think the public can be assured that whenever, if there was some malfeasance, that the permanent secretary acted quickly, precisely, to deal with any issue that arose, and that her criticism she will find when she goes and checks the facts will prove to be misdirected. That is my advice, and I wish to stand on that advice.
Look at man. Chippy, we've been through this, you know. You all rest on house of where we are today. Way out in the middle of nowhere. You have so much money to pay for it. All right? That nobody can live in. And you had all kind of paintings they would
Members, there's a member on the floor.
The House, I addressed this issue of the House.
Very well.
You know, the House was simply, you know, not something we should have bought. In the wrong place, you know, overpriced, on and on and on, away from everything. You know, anybody who, well, we made this point when we were in opposition, so, you know. The House should have been bought in Buckhead, where the Council Generals live, but it's 45 minutes out of town. And we have to live with that mistake. And we have to live with that mistake.
I started to drive there, but I realized I was driving.
You could get lost getting there.
He was 45 minutes out.
You get lost getting there. Mr. Speaker, so I commend these bills to the House, this bill to the House, and these Foreign Service rules. I am certain that the officers of the ministry are pleased that we've come to this point. I thought that the contributions of all members, save the member for Long Island, were useful. And it's unfortunate that there was well, I'm going to say, like the opposition spokesman just said, I can only speak to what I know, since I wasn't here when he spoke. But the contributions were useful. We begin a new era with the passage of this bill. The government of the Bahamas is resolute in protecting the reputation of our country. I thank all of the members for their support of this bill. I enjoyed, what was that, the 15, 20 minutes at the start of this wind-up. To me, that's what Parliament is all about and should be. And I enjoy giving as good as I get. And I will never back up. And I will never retreat. I don't care how bigoted you are and who your granddaddy was. I am not going to back up in support of the things I believe and stand for. And I certainly don't get swayed by idle propaganda. So thank you, Mr. Speaker, and all members for your support. Now let's get our fellows on social media busy with the spin on this and how she, did discredit to the side of the Free National Movement. And I'm sorry that she did so. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.